today's show, we're going to be going over how to avoid getting your account suspended. Now, this may not be the sexiest thing in the world and not something that you want to learn more about, but trust me when I say that you need to know this information. And I'm bringing on Jeff Schick of jeffschick.com. He's been our attorney for years with iLove when we had our 46 products suspended in 6 months. He was there along the way to help us out through that whole process. So he's going to give you some ideas and some actionable items on how to prevent this from happening to your account. Learn from my mistakes and learn from Jeff. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview with Jeff. Now, before we jump in, you're probably going to notice that there is a couple other people on this call. This is our weekly mastermind call where we get together, we discuss challenges in each other's businesses, we bring on guests live, and so you can actually join us live by visiting profitablepineapplefarm.com, and we jump on a Zoom call just like the one you're going to watch, but we do this months in advance. So what you're going to be watching was recorded months ago, and you can actually get on the call with us, with these guests, and ask them questions live and in person. So if you wanted to do that, it's only $99 a month at the time of this recording. Visit profitablepineapplefarm.com, profitablepineapplefarm.com. All right, let's jump into the interview. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Dr. Ziegler.
So for those that don't know who you are, just give our viewers just a little bit of a background of who you are, what you do, and what you do for Amazon specific sellers.
Got it. So I'm an attorney, but I think what's more interesting about me is the fact of how I got here. So what I do is I work with Amazon sellers, helping them through the issues they have. I actually started selling on Amazon in 2011. So when I was in college, my parents are veterinarians, and one of their vendors came to them and said, "Hey, have you heard about this thing called Amazon?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm buying textbooks from them." They're like, "We need to figure out how to get our products there, but we don't want to put them there." And so they started selling me their pet shampoos to sell on Amazon, and one thing led to another, and hundreds of thousands of bottles of pet shampoo later, this is where I am. And so ended up going, growing basically a brand from scratch with zero listings to, at one point, it was the number one selling pet shampoo in the world. It was 1,800 5-star reviews, number one on all the Amazon charts. And then those private label sellers figured out how to beat us at our own game.
What year was this when you started selling that?
That was 2011. So yeah, it grew. I remember one time talking to a human pharmacist, and I was telling him about how I was selling this pet shampoo, and we had just had our first $1,000 day. And I was like, I can't believe there's that much here to sell. He goes, "I bet you there's $5,000 days if you really put your mind to it." I'm like, there's no way there's that much. And then I remember one time we had a $15,000 day, which for us was a big day. I think it was one of the prime days. And I remember texting him going, "You're not going to believe it. We made $15,000 yesterday." He goes, "I told you." So it's funny how Amazon works, right? It's you take this small little business in Georgia in an area that was designated by the census as being in a poverty zone and take it to becoming a multi-million-dollar Amazon business. It's kind of cool.
And so this was in 2011. Were you an attorney at this point?
No, I was still in college. So
okay.
I didn't become an attorney till 2018. So I'm on year 5 now of being an attorney. But so in 2013, I decided I'd always wanted to go to law school, but Amazon sort of made that possible. So I enrolled at the University of Pennsylvania in 2014 and then graduated in 2018 and became an attorney. So
that's a fascinating story. And I've known you for how many years, and I didn't know any of that story. So thank you for sharing that, because I learned a lot from this today.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize you didn't know that. Oh, sorry.
So I tell people all the time that we use you when we had Amazon came for blood for us. We had 40 some products suspended. We didn't even have that many SKUs, but we had multiple some products get suspended more than once. And you kind of helped us through that whole process during that time. I don't know if you remember that, but we do, because you helped us so much, but you probably go through that every day. So it's not a big deal for you.
We help sellers every day, but it's, I still remember most of the cases when I hear the details about them. Then it's like, oh, that's the case. Although sometimes it gets, we have quite a few that we work on, put it that way. So
it's rough. And yeah, when Amazon comes for blood, they come for blood. But with the help of you, we got through it, which was good. Now, let's jump into today. So we're recording this in 2023. Of course, the Amazon landscape changes all the time. What can sellers do today to help prevent the suspensions of not only their account, but also individual products?
So I'd say there's 2 things that I'd love to talk about today that I think are interesting. One is safety and one is intellectual property. Those tend to be the 2 biggest reasons that we have people getting suspended these days. So safety is relatively easy, and I can cover that in like 10 or so minutes. Basically, a lot of times, Amazon doesn't require that you get safety testing done for certain categories at the start of selling. Now, some of them they do, like children's toys, you got to have safety tests in order to sell them. But certain categories, they don't require safety tests. But if things go wrong, the first thing they'll ask for, and I mean by going wrong, people saying, like, oh, I got hurt with this product, I had an allergic reaction, I had XYZ happen. The first thing Amazon's going to ask you for is, hey, give us your safety test to prove that this is safe. And I always tell people it's a lot cheaper to get safety tests when you don't need them, and you can just take your time and find the best deal than if you're rushing to get it done immediately and you have to pay to put it at the front of the line. So, and of course you're losing sales because a lot of times Amazon will suspend that listing while they await those safety test results because they don't want unsafe products on their marketplace.
Now, I'll pause you there to give you my personal experience with that. And you are 100% correct on that. So the first time we ever got suspended for a safety product problem, we did not have the testing done and we had to rush it to the front of the line. And essentially they were like, it's going to be about 8 to 10 weeks. And so 8 to 10 weeks of your product being suspended. So lost opportunity costs, or the opportunity cost is huge. And I said, what if I paid you double? They said we could have it done in a week. So we had to pay double the normal testing price, but they got it done in a week, which that opportunity cost was huge. But if we would have had the testing done beforehand, it would have been suspended for what, 12 hours, 24 hours, however long it takes them to review it. And so that's what you're going into right there. And I can't stress that enough. And you should have safety testing done anyway, because if they're putting it in the body or on the body, you could have a big lawsuit if something bad happens.
Yeah. And you should have it done yourself. Like a lot of times sellers will be like, oh, my manufacturer did this for me. Well, one, there's two problems with that. One, the manufacturer is going to have the test done in their name. So the safety report will say XYZ manufacturing company, not yours. And the product will be, like, if I'm selling this screwdriver, it'll just say, like, oh, you can't see it because of the Zoom thing, but it'll say, screwdriver. Whereas if it's your product, you want it to say Craftsman, blue and clear screwdriver, because that's what matches your brand and what matches your product detail page. So that's just something to think out there. The other aspect of it is if there's some manufacturers that will send a perfect sample to the lab because they know it's going to be tested, but then what they actually supply you is something totally different. And you don't want that either.
Yeah, you can go ahead and test that in that or you can test that against what the manufacturer did. And a good place to start to find those testing is your manufacturer. So ask your manufacturer who they use as a third party to do that testing. And that's where you can probably find a third party tester.
Correct. And I'm a little bit particular. If they tell me like, oh, I used ABC Corp for testing, I'll go find DEF Corp, because that way it's always good to have a second opinion to make sure that if two labs say the product's safe, then you feel pretty safe it's pretty confident that it's safe. So that's my feel on product safety.
Yeah. And I can't agree with you more. I mean, that's 100% what you need to do proactively, not retroactively, and really just take advantage of getting it done. Hey, it's Dr. Travis Ziegler, and I wanted to thank you for watching this video. I just wanted to take a brief couple seconds to let you know about a free Amazon PPC Masterclass that I have. Just head to profitablepineapple.com to sign up for that free Amazon PPC Masterclass, or you can click the link down below in the description. I'll see you inside. Okay, what's the next part?
Next part is intellectual property. So here's an interesting one, because you probably know this, but a lot of people don't. And so one of the things we're seeing a lot of sellers getting in trouble for right now is they're coming to us, they're saying my private label ASIN is suspended because of trademark infringement. And I'll say, okay, well, what did you do? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, well, let's figure this out. So we go into the back end, we start looking around, and then we get to the keywords. And so I'm just going to come up with a hypothetical example here. Velcro. Everyone knows that hook and loop closure is the same thing or most people know that hook and loop closure is the same thing as Velcro. And that unless you have 3M branded hook and loop closure, you can't call it Velcro, because Velcro is a trademark of 3M. So with this example in mind, people will go in and they're smart enough to know that they can't say like, oh, I'm selling a Velcro, let's say it's a purse with Velcro or with hook and loop closures. They won't say that they've got a purse with Velcro, because they're smart enough to know that they can't say that in the title. But what they don't think about is the fact that some of these tools out there that tell you what keywords to use don't think about the trademark aspect. So they find all these keywords and they realize, well, this purse ranks really well for Velcro as a keyword. So they put it in their keywords, and then they start selling it and they get hit with a trademark infringement violation. And they're like, well, I don't understand. I didn't do anything wrong. My title is correct. My product name's correct. My descriptions are good. Where's the problem? And it's that they have a trademark term in their keywords. So it could be Velcro, could also be competitors' names. Like I've seen some people, like I had to call last week. It was one of my brand new clients, and he wanted me to look over his listing, and we were taking a look, and I said, okay, go to the keywords now. And he goes, and we start going through there. And one of the terms caught me because I'm like, it was just weird. It was just like a weird term. And of course I can't say what it is, but like, I've got a Hewlett Packard computer. So imagine that the term, if we're selling computers, imagine the term was like Packard. Just, you wouldn't normally see that as a keyword unless, and so when I asked him, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, that's my competitor. I'm like, what do you mean your competitor? He goes, well, yeah, that's the name of their brand. So then I was like, okay, so this is trade, and he had no idea that that's trademark infringement. And so he took that competitor's term out, and his sales are still fine. He didn't, he didn't tank in his review, or in his reviews, but in his rank. But if he would have kept selling, he could have gotten a trademark infringement complaint. He could have gotten potentially sued, because the courts have been really clear that using your competitor's name, like a trademarked term, in your keywords is infringement.
Even though it's in the back end.
Even though it's in the back end and not visible
Yep.
to customers.
Yeah. So, and there are tools out there that you can scrape somebody's back end keywords. So it's very accessible to get those. And so very easy to get those. So a competitor could find that, send it to Amazon, and then Amazon will suspend you and then look into it after that.
Correct. And it can be expensive too, because we've seen an increasing, like, and it's a disturbing trend of brands, especially the big brands. What they're realizing is, like, big brands are, they're not good at Amazon per se. Like, some of them are, but most of them aren't. And so you've got these gigantic brands, and they're saying, we can't win at Amazon, but where we can win? We can outspend them on legal fees. So they know that they can, like, we don't know how to invest $20,000 and get rid of this person as a competitor on Amazon. But we do know how to spend $20,000 filing a federal lawsuit against them and get rid of them as a competitor in the courtroom. And so they're doing that instead.
I have been on the other side of that, and it is not fun. Even though we won, we were on the other side of it, because just what you said, they just try to tie it up long enough to make you keep spending in legal fees. Right. And to a small business, 25 to 50,000 in legal fees is a lot. To them, it's nothing. It's pennies. Right. And so we got tied up from February to November. We ended up winning the lawsuit because we were in the right, but they were looking to sell their company. So they had to tie up all their litigation. And so we ended up settling. They paid all our attorney fees, and we ended up winning even a settlement above that. So we got lucky. But the whole time it just stressed us out, and it just was not a lot of fun. So the back end search terms and having trademark terms of your competitor in there, like you said, isn't going to make a huge difference, because when people are searching for those brands, it's going to be very hard to steal those sales to begin with. And so we don't even bid on them for PPC most of the time, just because it's so expensive. So there's not really a point in doing that unless you're really pushing your brand to make it a lot bigger. So most of the time, if you're under 10 million, I wouldn't even worry about going after the brand competitors, because there's so much more opportunity that costs a lot less.
Correct. And same thing when you're making those listings. The other big thing people have to think about from an IP perspective, phrases that sound, you think like, oh, this is just normal, right? Like, you just assume, like, well, I'll throw a word out there. What is champagne?
Yeah, champagne's made in the state in France, that specific state.
It is.
Yeah.
But what is it? What is champagne otherwise?
Oh, it's bubbling wine, sparkling wine.
It's sparkling wine. So sellers might not even know. Like, if you ask a seller, like, hey, describe this glass of sparkling wine, they might just call it champagne, right? I mean, a lot of people would just naturally call it, oh, that's champagne, without even thinking about the fact that, well, really it's sparkling wine. But if you put in Amazon, like, and we all know that you can't legally sell alcohol on Amazon, but if you put if you were to sell this bottle of sparkling wine and you just called it champagne, that would be trademark infringement of the Champagne region if it's not made there. And so so you also have to watch out for, like, what we'd call in the industry terms of art. These specific terms that mean something that people don't think of anything. So it's like Xerox, Kleenex, champagne, those sort of, terms to watch out for.
More specifically, in my space, we have a competitor that it's called AccuSoft Lid Scrubs, and they actually trademarked the term lid scrubs. And so we actually had it in our listing at one time, but then we found that was trademarked. So we pulled it out and changed it to eyelid scrubs, because that's actually what it is. But yeah, they trademarked that term, and we didn't even realize it.
smart. I'm glad that you found it, because that, yeah, could have been expensive. So,
And it's one of those terms that like we use as doctors all the time, like just use these lid scrubs instead of eyelid wipes,
right.
and use these lid scrubs twice a day, blah, 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 and not even thinking that it was a trademark term. But yeah, it was. So we could have gotten in big trouble, but we ended up pulling before that.
Right. Well, yeah, as attorneys, we always will say like, oh, I'm just going to go Lexus that, because you're searching it on LexisNexis. But in reality, we're going to go do legal research, because if we're, if we're using Westlaw, for instance, which is their big competitor, we're not Lexusing it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to Google it. Same thing.
Yeah.
Not quite as accurate as what you're doing, but all right. Well, IP and safety,
Yeah.
I think those are two pretty big points, especially the safety issue, which you should be doing, period, just because that's ethical.
Right.
And well, I guess IP is too. You should respect other people's trademarks. And so that's an ethical purpose as well, but
Yeah.
at a different kind of stance. So anything else that sellers can be doing in 2023 to really help avoid that suspension?
Really, things to avoid the suspension. I mean, monitor the voice of the customer report. I like to call that's like your tornado warning siren, like think of that as like your radar. So you should be checking the voice of the customer almost every day, if not multiple times a day, because that's going to be the first sign that something's going on. Wait, we've got a spike in NCX, negative customer experience. What's causing that? And I'm a big advocate, and this is actually something interesting that they track now. If you like, say you see like two customers make a complaint that like size runs small on something, I'm a big advocate. Call back, like if you got 1,000 units sitting there, call back 10 of them. Because if you go through the voice of the customer page and you call back 10 units, Amazon tracks that. And it'll actually give it a special code showing that you went to voice the customer, you took action, and you requested units to be sent back to you. In their mind, that's a spot check. So when they're evaluating this product for suspension, if they see that, oh, you saw this problem, you called it back, and you're still selling it, in their eyes, they're going to be like, well, if you called it back and there's not a problem, then there's probably fine. So we're not going to necessarily suspend you. But if you don't call it back, you just like, there's some people complaining, but that's just customers not understanding my product. Like a lot of sellers will sometimes say that. That's actually, their Amazon's going to look at it and go, wait, no, it's not that customers don't understand your product. Your product's, there's something wrong with your product. And as they start seeing more issues, that's when you start having products getting taken down, listing at risk of removal or listing removed, and so forth.
Yeah, the voice of the customer has been huge. After we talked, I think it was a little over a year and a half ago, actually, no, it's probably like 2.5 years ago now. We actually told or educated our customer service rep to just go in there daily and address all the issues. And if you start seeing a recurring pattern, we need to address it. And so come to us, let us know what it is. But usually they're things that are small, but like you said, Amazon is tracking every single one of those clicks and tracking that you're doing this in XYZ and trying to make sure that you're staying compliant. So staying in the voice of the customer is huge. Just I recommend that being one of the things you check every single day as an Amazon seller.
Me too. That's that and account health dashboard. Most people won't have anything pop up on account health, but what's interesting that we've started to track with some of our clients is that if we're watching their voice of the customer, we can usually watch products go from red, or I should say, I'm sorry, from dark green to light green to yellow to orange to red, and then they move over to the account health dashboard as a violation. So you can actually catch these things for the most part within those windows before they become problems. And so, we like to say, if you take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jeff, this has been informative. It's been a big review for me because you've taught me so much over the years in the law space of Amazon. How can viewers get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out for your services?
So obviously a big part of what we do is prevention. So we have our monthly retainer. It's $89 a month right now, although in the future it's going to be going up in price. So I tell people, if you're on the fence, think about it now. But you can go to our website, jeffschick.com, and sign up, or you can send us an email, shoot us a text. We're happy to help. I don't currently sell right now, but I've been a seller for over a decade. So I understand what people are going through, understand how the process works. And so, I like to tell people there's no question too big or too small for us. If we don't know the answer, we'll find you a specialist who does. And chances are we've probably seen the question before. So we like people just to bring stuff to us because for me, it's always a challenge. I like the fun stuff.
Yeah. So, and I will highly recommend joining the retainer program. That is something that I am not an affiliate for Jeff, but I was a customer of Jeff and I highly recommend him because he helped us get through so much. And so that's why I have him on the show and that's why I recommend him. So jeffschick.com. make sure you guys go check that out. I'll put it down in the comments and the description down below. Jeff, anything else?
I think that's about it. I really appreciate you having me on here. What questions do you have for me? Do you have any questions or anything that you've seen interesting that you want to run by?
You've always answered all my questions, and it's been always very thorough. And most of ours were around product safety testing. And so we're actually getting into the food space. So going into the food space, what do you recommend we do to prevent suspensions in that?
So food space is kind of interesting because state laws, there's a lot of states that have like archaic little state laws that revolve around food. So I would say one thing you really want to check out is based on your state where your fulfillment center is going to be, that's, preparing the products, or like the commercial kitchen, you want to see what the licensing requirements are there. Because the first thing that Amazon tends to ask for in a food safety violation is they want to see like, where's your food safety license? Oddly enough, there's like training courses that you can take on safe food handling they're online. They're like $150, but I do recommend, like take food safety courses. I think one of them is called Serve Safe, if I'm not mistaken, that they issue like certificates. So I'd say, happy to talk to you offline too, but definitely take some training courses and make sure your team members that touch the products have taken the training courses, because even though most of the stuff is basic, like washing your hands, Amazon still requires you, if you have a violation in the food industry, to show that you did it. And it has to come from that third party, education provider. So,
and that's where those signs that you see at every restaurant come from.
Exactly. So,
yeah. So we're actually hiring a co-packer, so we won't be touching it ourselves, our team directly. And so what's your advice as far as using a co-packer? Just making sure they follow those guidelines.
Make sure they follow those guidelines. Also talk to your insurance carrier to make sure that you've got the proper insurance in place, because the co-packer should be able to add you as an additional insured on their policy. Really important to get that certificate from them, because then you'll know, like most co-packers are never going to let their coverage lapse, but the certificate protects you because you're guaranteed coverage as long as the certificate is valid.
Okay.
So ask them for their Accord certificate, and then you still may want to just like, for at least for you as the owner of the company, you might want to get your safe food handling and certification, just so that way if you ever have an issue with Amazon, you can prove that, hey, we did it too, even though it's going above and beyond what the state would require.
And we'll probably also overpay for our insurance and make sure we have that protection even above and beyond what we get.
It's worth it when you're talking about food, because just last week I had a seller reach out to me because they had a potato chips that they sold, and somebody didn't read the allergen panel, and the allergen said, contains wheat and soy, and they had an allergic reaction because they're allergic to soy. And Amazon pulled the product down and wanted to and this is an interesting one, the way they handled it. They said, we need to know, like, have you had any issues with allergies before? Who packed it? Have there been any recalls? It was like 10 questions that they had, like really detailed questions. And then it said, if your allergen was listed, if the allergen above was listed on your packaging, give us a picture of the packaging showing that it was listed. And so he had a picture of his packaging showing that it says, allergen contains soy. So then Amazon reinstated the listing, but they did immediately take it down just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. I mean, they always shoot first and then kind of aim after.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. They shoot like 25 times and then see what gets hit in the process.
Well, I appreciate you asking that question, because it kind of sparked my brain to ask about the food industry. And so viewers got a little bonus on the food side. So anything else?
That's you put me on the spot there. That's about it that I can think of. I mean, the big ones that we're seeing right now, it just continuously revolves around safety and IP. So I just can't stress it enough that it's like, the one big thing is just, what you don't know can kill your business. You just have to be careful, and as we go into this weird recession environment, keep in mind that there's going to be more of these little ambulance chaser lawyers out there trying to find gotchas. And so if you have a product that could potentially be dangerous, I'd say, you want to overwarn. Like I make fun of the hot coffee case quite a bit, but if you're selling coffee, you better have a hot coffee sticker, because there's a lawyer out there who's probably starving that needs a case that will find one if you don't protect yourself. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's very good advice. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show. And again, visit jeffschick.com. I'll put that down in the comments and in the description. So again, thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And make sure you check out this next video. If you enjoyed this content, you're going to love this next video that I handpicked for you. And what else do they need to do? like this video and make sure you subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed this content.